God's story. Thank you so much, David, for the verse of assurance that we see in the sunrise. I got to see that coming this morning, and it was just a reminder to me of God's faithfulness. My name is Teresa, and I'm delighted to be here and share God's story with you. At some point in my young years, I came to believe that I was insignificant, incapable, unworthy, unlovable, and alone. I didn't get there overnight, nor did I get there by myself. That's a story for another day. I'm going to choose to share with you just three of the vices that I would choose to use to try to fill the holes in the colander of my soul. Number one, just because of all the things I told you that I believe to be true about myself, you would be wrong to assume I was a wallflower. I'm not shy, nor am I quiet. You don't have to ask me what I'm thinking. I'll tell you. Entering into my senior year of high school, I desired to be voted, what else? Best dressed. A month later, I was more appropriately voted class clown. Funny is kind of a nice vice. People laughed and people liked me. I call it the art of distraction. In my college years, my second vice would be sex. It was never pleasurable nor satisfying. It would only serve as a temporary stamp on the back of my hand that said, you must not be that repulsive. My third vice is probably one that the public applauds greatly and one that I liked. It was busyness. I was successful in my career, and I had a lot of friends. I kept the hamster wheel of my life going full speed at all times until I would become exhausted, and I would fall off the wheel, and the outside world that kept me going would stop, and my inside world and the truths I believed about myself would become deafeningly loud. I would take a few days and rest and climb right back on that hamster wheel. In 1994, married to the man of my life, the only man I ever gave my heart to, with 2 beautiful children. After 28 years of wear and tear, that hamster wheel came apart. The culmination of my inner battle with the truth, my desire to be seen, accepted, known, plus a lifetime of insomnia led to a nervous breakdown. My greatest fear and deepest shame had entered center stage and demanded full attention. It was a severing with reality. So many things that David shared I could relate to. The hospital room, the window in the door, the handcuffs. It's all familiar. That particular crisis would last 2.5 months and a lifetime of recovery. That's just one crisis, and there would be others. But it's not just about the crisis. It's about the everyday. Anxiety and depression that leaves you exhausted. So severe, it's debilitating. Debilitating. It takes away your abilities. People come in the crisis with casseroles, watching the kids, those things. In the everyday where you can't explain why, you can't reach your hands up to your hair to wash it in the shower. why you can't care for your kids in all, not just the best possible ways, but in the most basic ways. The meals your family wants to meet every single night, all the things, the list, the shopping, the preparing, the making. It's in the everyday. And I would think to myself, I just can't do it anymore. We need you then too. I need you then too. Pastor Brad Bell recently said during a teaching, God uses people to help people see God. And I would add, that can happen when we choose to see people. We give them the opportunity to see Christ in us. Many, many people say, in fact, I was working on a client just the other night as I was talking about this conference coming up. And she said, I don't know what to say. I just don't know what to say. And so I don't say anything. And that's common. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable with many crises, with miscarriages, with deaths, with so many crises. It's awkward and we don't know what to say. I read a story once about a man who went to an AA meeting because he was invited by his friend. And at the AA meeting, as one person was sharing, let's see if that'll stay. As one person was sharing, others in the group would randomly raise their hands. When the time was over, the man asked his friends, why on earth would people ask questions during those odd times? And the man would share back, they're not asking questions. They're raising their hands when they've had a similar experience or shared feelings. They're saying, I see you. Me too. You're not alone. Some of my community, I'd like to share with you how some of my community helped in crisis and in the everyday. Remember the college years and the stamp on the back of my hand? I would meet up with a woman from church named Betty, and I would sit across from her at Carol's. I'd never met her before, and I would share and confess my secret shame of my sexual sins. Betty didn't wince or turn her head away. She did say, I have never experienced that, but I have experienced shame. And that day, she raised her hand and said, I see you. You're not alone. I walked away that day free from that particular vice, never to go back to it again. Oh, I skipped. Sorry, I'm going to go backwards. I didn't give you all my vices. One of the vices, did I do this? Busyness, did I talk about busyness? Oh, I did. Thank you. It's a little nerve-wracking, us all. Thank you. I am so glad to not be alone. I should just give you some of my notes out there. You could cue me. Some of my other community would be a roommate in my single days who would call across the hall because she knew I had insomnia. Are you asleep yet? And when I would say no, she'd say, I'm praying. And she would even invite me in to sleep with her if I thought that would help. A pastor would come by and pick me up because I had called, and the knives from the kitchen were beckoning to me. I'd never had that experience before. They were pulling, and it scared me. And this pastor just came by and took me with him to run some errands. I was not alone. His wife would show up that evening on my doorstep with a stack of Janet Oakey books, knowing my brain needed a break. And in her countenance, I could see she saw me, and I was not alone. Friends and family watched my kids and sat with my husband. Close friends sat with us through the psych ward episodes. People brought food. One couple brought a Christmas tree, and the next weekend they showed up with decorations. If it hadn't been for them, we probably wouldn't have had one. My kids wouldn't have had one that year. I didn't really care, but they did. So many people prayed. My family, my immediate extended family, my blood family, who wouldn't understand all of it. It was confusing. It was complex. They would rally together funds to make sure I got in a different hospital and I got better care. My girlfriend would travel 4 hours to that hospital to cut my hair because it had been the first time in months that I cared. My doctors, my psychologist, I would travel every Monday, and I still do, to her office and pray, God, this is your time. Have your way. And he did, and he does. My psychiatrist cares for me. You can see it in her affect. She's not just doing a job. She cares, and she monitors with great skill my medication. There were other friends that I could call that would just come and sit with me. I want you to know, if you're here and you're suffering, you don't have to be better. You don't have to be healed to see others. The moment you decide to share a bit of your pain, you're seeing others. I fill out a note when I go into the psychiatrist's office. What are you receiving from my care? Better management is what I say. What do you want from our services? Better management is what I say. I'm so happy today to say I have better management. I have tools that at times I wield with skill. And there are still other days that I'm at a loss to find them. But I have better management. Some of the opportunities that I've been given to see, I'm just going to share with you because it's not big. It's not always big. And I want you to know, nobody expects one person to do everything all the time. It just doesn't work. We can't do that in our humanity. God didn't even desire for us to do that. During a particular season, somebody at church was talking about asking the Lord to help us see people. And I love people. I've always been the one that drives down the road and looks in the car next to me and thinks, what's their life story? So I'm going to Costco, and I'd been praying, Lord, help me to see. I go with my son, and in one of the aisles, there's a woman with an infant in the front and a toddler in the basket. And he throws his tippy cup. So I go across the aisle, and I pick up the tippy cup, and I give it back and say, oh, gosh, here you go. On the way out of Costco, walking down to give our receipts, she's holding her infant, and he's crying. And the toddler's strapped in the front seat crying. And her basket is overflowing. And I just reach out my hand and say, I remember those days. I just remember those days. Not much hope there, right? As my son and I are driving out of the parking lot, as God would have it, we drove right past her. And her toddler's in the back of the car, and she's got her infant trying to unload the groceries. And we stop and say, can we help you unload the groceries? And she says, no. But I don't know how you knew. And she began to cry and just said, thank you so much. I see you. You're not alone. I get tired too. I have to watch my boundaries. And I have a friend, I meet with several young women. I have a friend who struggles greatly. And in my moments of struggle, it's so hard to reach out. And it had been a time since I had seen her. But I pursued her. And I said, let's get together. I sat with her across the table from breakfast with not much energy and just listened. And she talked and talked, and I just listened. And I could relate. I know. I get it. I know. That's what I said. I get it. I know. And she said, you're the only one who understands. That wasn't hard. We may not be in an AA group, but as believers, we are all invited to sit in the circle of shared sufferings. When we walk daily with our weakness and our brokenness, it reminds us we've been saved and are on a sanctifying journey. It's where hope comes to life. And in humility, we get to come alongside one another. My great hope is that in that circle, each of us would take the opportunity to share our pain with our community. God has chosen the trials of this life to refine us. When people hear our pain, they are set free to share theirs. And we get the privilege of sitting with them and listening and saying, I see you. You're not alone. In the words of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I'll finish with this. The first service that one owes to others in the fellowship consists of listening to them. Just as love of God begins with listening to his word, so the beginning of love for our brothers and sisters is learning to listen to them. Thank you so much.